My name is Roland Mumford. I am doing a video today about why I became a civil rights lawyer. And it's going to be an interesting video. And I wanted to start out by explaining why I became a civil rights attorney doing 1983 law, and I'm also doing employment discrimination law. The seed was laid for me to become a civil rights attorney during an interview that I had with a prosecutor who did my fitness interview or application to become an attorney. And I will leave that interview at that. I won't discuss that anymore. I started out with my practice having to take criminal court appointments. You would represent people that were indigent, and it was a way to get some experience and start some income while also trying to build a private practice. And in the course of doing that, you interact with prosecutors and police officers. And I remember one time a detective saying, "We always overcharge," and a prosecutor standing in the background saying, "Don't say anything like that," especially with a defense attorney standing there. And that, again, sort of laid the seed again to become a Section 1983 civil rights attorney one day in the future. But didn't have any mentorship, didn't know anybody locally that did it. I started doing employment discrimination law, and that sort of overlapped into 1983 law because I started taking cases where government employees were exercising free speech and becoming terminated as retaliation. Their supervisors, for example, may have been an elected person. Maybe it's a road supervisor, a sheriff, or whatever position. And those people didn't, they wanted or expected their employees to participate in their campaign staff or elections or doing things. And the employees didn't want to do so and were terminated. And that was sort of the bridge between the employment discrimination and the 1983 civil rights practice. And in Section 1983 civil rights law, it is primarily litigating police misconduct cases. I really didn't start doing the police misconduct cases full time until about 2 years ago. But going back to when I had started my practice, around 2009 or so, I had filed a negligence lawsuit against a local police department. And because of that, I was subjected to harassment and intimidation by a few local police officers. I remember being at a bookstore, Barnes and Noble, and that's kind of where I hung out in the evenings, reading a book, maybe before watching a movie. And police officers would just awkwardly start walking around me every 10 minutes because a few of them had been on station to, I guess, for patrol for that shopping area. But then it really got bad. I had represented a person, and we were at the police station. And this officer comes out and says, "Well, Mr. Mumford, I can take you and your client, and we'll put you into this room." And this particular police officer, prior to that, had harassed me a number of times in public. For example, I could walk out of a movie theater and walk towards the parking lot, and he had been there, I guess, on duty as a private guard or something. And he's not very good at making derogatory comments about somebody without it being obvious. Never said anything, just took the high road. And then one time I was at a restaurant. I remember sitting at a bar, and nobody was sitting at the bar, and bartender was nice, let me have the remote and kind of switched the channel to a news station. And then a few minutes later, out of nowhere, somebody behind me makes a very rude remark about, "Why isn't it on ESPN?" I turned around. It was that police officer. To avoid conflict, I just switched it to the ESPN, finished my meal, moved on. And going back now to this date at this police station, this person, he apparently was involved with my client in some manner. And he takes me and the client through a door to the left, walks us through that door, and then puts us into another room. And we're sitting in there, and never saw him again. And then another officer comes through, one that I had known to be rude to me in the past. And another high-level officer comes in, probably the second, third, or fourth person in the chain of command. He was fine. He acted professional towards me. But this officer comes in and threatens to arrest me because I had entered this room with my client, somebody that was in the process of being arrested, and said that I had done that on my own. I said, no, an officer walked us in here. He said that I was lying, and if I said another word, he was going to arrest me. And I was very disappointed in the other supervising officer, very high level, that allowed that person to treat me that way. This person was a former Marine. I don't know his name. I could recognize him. And he should have been called out for it. I didn't want to be arrested. I didn't say anything. However, at that time, had I known what I knew today, I would have told him, please arrest me so I can see you in federal court. Because I do Section 1983 civil rights law. I know my rights, and I advocate for the rights of others. We walked through the door, and that officer wanted to arrest me more than anything. The other supervising officer, I said to him, another officer put us in there. And interesting, that officer never showed up again. And he believed me, and he just made the statement that we couldn't have anybody in there. And when that officer had called me a liar and threatened to arrest me, with the ignorance of knowing that there were cameras up above all over the place that would have shown that that first officer had brought me in there. And that same officer on another date tried to harass and intimidate me at a BP gas station. I was pumping my gas. I was in my vehicle. I believe I was finished. And I see a police car on the other side of the pumps, about 20 yards away, maybe 15 yards, on the other side of the pumps. And this officer, the man that threatened to arrest me, closes the distance between his vehicle and then comes to my truck and walks alongside, looking through my windshield and then looking through the passenger window into my vehicle and giving me the dirtiest look and just looking inside as if I had anything illegal with me. I should have gotten out of my truck. I should have put my phone on record, and I should have called him out for it, knowing my rights now, knowing what I can do, knowing that I'm not going to be intimidated by a police officer. But I just stayed professional, stayed in my vehicle, and then he walked around back to the other side of the pumps into his car. I sent a letter by fax to the police chief of that police department, explaining how I had been harassed in a number of different ways that I'm not even going into complete detail about. No response was ever received. That case, we ended up moving on. There was a disposition, and that was the end of it. And over the years, I have always wanted to get into 1983 law, but it was only really until I moved to Savannah, Georgia, where I started a new law office. I litigate in Tennessee and in Georgia, now also in Arkansas. And I had the fortune of being able to meet somebody in East Tennessee that does a lot of 1983 law, and we started doing some cases together, on especially on the free speech cases. And I learned 1983 law. And now I have a practice that I literally can't handle the phone calls. I just filed my first police misconduct, false arrest case in Arkansas literally 15 minutes ago. So I say this because I've always wanted to have some way to cathartically address this issue somehow. Somehow it's always been built up in me, even when I still go to a local court or I deal with this particular police department that I actually have now a federal lawsuit against. And I hope that for those of you, if you ever have a situation where you have to deal with a false arrest or intimidation by a police officer, pull out that phone, record, act like a professional, and stand up for your rights. If you're looking for somebody to advocate for your rights and to stand up for you, call me at Roland Mumford, mumford.law. And I will fight for you and advocate for you for the very same strength that I wish I had had years ago, that I'm now taking that strength and creating this video, however imperfect this video may come across. But I didn't want to do it with a teleprompter like I do some of my other videos. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate your time and attention to this. Have a great day.